This is my first time here at CASA, and I tell you what, this is a beautiful space. It's great to be talking to you today about demand and go-to-market. Let's see if we can get this PowerPoint ready to go. Hey, that's me. I'm about to go deep and go pretty fast on these topics, so that's a way you can get a copy of this deck. I'll show that later at the end of this presentation as well, but you might want to snap that. I'm going to talk about a lot of different frameworks and best practices and research that I think you might want to send to your head of marketing, your head of product, and maybe even your CEO. So hi, I'm John. I have a question for you. And the question is, what do you think are the two biggest, most costly B2B growth mistakes? I want you to think about that. This is going to really be the center of this conversation today. What are the two costliest B2B growth mistakes? I want you to think about that. Now, why am I so passionate about it? I am a total career-long revenue growth geek. I'm the founder and CEO of Intelligent Demand. I named the company Intelligent Demand, for God's sakes, so you can tell what I'm into. We are an expert B2B revenue growth agency. We work with enterprise companies. We've worked with companies all up and down IT and telecom, but also healthcare, FinServ, et cetera. I've spent 10 years on the client side first. So I had a lot of your roles leading marketing, product, sales, biz dev. And then for the last 15 years, I've been an agency leader and consultant. And I've seen well over 300 different B2B companies try to drive growth, okay? And I am a passionate person about answering these two questions, finding out what are the two biggest mistakes. Since we're introducing each other to each other, I'm also married. I live in Denver, Colorado with my wife, Jess. She is prettier and smarter than me. We have 2 children, and we are oddly into our children. We are very so those are Labradoodles, by the way, totally bougie. Okay, back to the question. What are the two most costly B2B growth mistakes? Before I answer that, I want to talk about why it's so important that we answer this, okay? And I'm going to do it with some research. Let's zoom up and talk about the current state of B2B growth. So B2B growth is expensive. Do you realize that a third or more of your company's revenue, the typical company's revenue, is spent on go-to-market? And it begs the question, how efficient, how effective is that spend? B2B growth is pivotal. We love our products, but I don't care how good your product is. I don't care how smart your sales team is. If your B2B growth program is not world-class, you're probably not going to hit your growth goals. But if it is, if you have a really strong B2B growth program, you're going to grow faster than your competitors, you're going to be loved in your category, and you're going to be more profitable. B2B growth has been changing tremendously, okay? I don't know if you've noticed, but your buyers are not dying to meet with your salespeople so that they can educate them about their business requirements. B2B buying is buyer-led. The art and science of go-to-market itself has been changing. There's all kinds of different ways to go to market. We're going to talk about that in a second. B2B growth is not just for new logos. It's end-to-end. It's acquisition. It's value delivery. It's renewals. It's expansion. I don't know if you've noticed RevOps, MarTech, Sales Tech, intent data. That's become more complex. And maybe most importantly, we have seen the ugly end of a growth at all costs, right? And so now efficient growth is totally mandatory. So B2B growth is changing. What also is changing is buyers. The act of B2B buying is changing. This is some great research and fresh research from 6th Sense, Gartner, Forrester, et cetera. So there's some things that we already knew that have just been validated. 2/3 of the journey is digital. Buying teams are growing in terms of both the number of personas that are involved and the number of departments that are involved. If you sell something with an ACV that's high, that's even bigger. What you might also know is that B2B buying teams do not enjoy buying from us. Gartner has some fantastic research about the act of buying stuff is hard. But some fresh research also reminds us that across B2B, in any market category, only 5 to 10% of your TAM, your ICP, is actually in an active buying moment any given month or quarter. Think about that. Everyone else is not even thinking about your category. So what are you giving to them? Also, they don't reach out until they're 70% of the way through the journey. That means they've already figured out their buying requirements. They already made their short list. And then this is the shocking stat. 84% of the time, buyers choose the first vendor they reach out to. So think about what this says. Most of them aren't in market. When they go into market, they're not talking to your sales team. They're not on your website. They're out there alone, determining their requirements. And when they finally reach out, if you're lucky enough to be the first vendor that they reach out to, you can win the business. So what does all this really mean? What it means is that B2B growth programs at most companies are badly outdated. So I want you to, this is a survey, raise your hand if you see any of these symptoms in the last 2 years at your company. Growth rates have flattened, missing your meetings, pipeline, or bookings target, decreasing conversion rates, slower deal cycles, rising CAC, strategies and tactics that used to work 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I see you, are not working quite so well anymore. These are symptoms not of you being awful. It's not that you're bad people. It's not that the world is against you. It's that it's time to update the way you go to market and the way you execute that growth strategy. So, we are now ready to answer the question. From my perspective, doing this for 15 years, what are the top 2 B2B growth mistakes that I've seen? Here we go. Mistake number 1. And by the way, these aren't just mistakes, they're also opportunities, because you can avoid these mistakes and you can fix these mistakes. So I don't want to be a bummer. This is actually good news. So mistake number 1 is our go-to-market strategy is stale. Our go-to-market strategy has gaps. Our go-to-market strategy is misaligned across product, marketing, and sales. Our go-to-market strategy is timid and scared. Our go-to-market strategy is undifferentiated. I see it every single day. Mistake number 2, our demand program is executed with siloed, tactical heroics that are disconnected from our go-to-market strategy. These are the 2 biggest mistakes I see every day, and sometimes I see one or the other, but I also often see them together. And so these must be fixed. What does it look like? This is what it looks like. You've got your go-to-market teams on the left. They're trying to solve complex internal problems and pursue big, complex opportunities in your market externally. And they're stepping all over each other with siloed heroics. Does this resonate? Have you seen this before? Anybody? Yeah? Thank you, Ralph. We haven't met yet. I like you. How do you fix it? So the big mistakes happen in the gap between your growth goals and those tactics. And the way it looks at most companies, you've got product and brand and demand and SDR and ops and CS and account management. They're busting their ass. They're smart. They're ambitious. They've got all the tools and all the technology, and they are just doing activities against what is oftentimes a fuzzy growth goal and confusing, conflicting priorities. This is what it really looks like in a lot of companies. I see some of you nodding. So what do you do about it? Okay, this is the low point in the presentation. It was a dark and stormy night. Here we go. All right. So we've put together at Intelligent Demand a 5-part answer to the question, John, cut the shit. How do you drive B2B revenue growth in a scalable, efficient, measurable, modern way? So there's 5 layers to a winning world-class growth strategy. I'm going to talk about 2 of them because those 2 fill the gap between now clearly defined growth goals, priorities, and constraints. We know what our growth goals are and our constraints. We are ready to apply expert tactics. How do we align around a winning go-to-market strategy? That's the solution 1. And then how do we execute integrated growth plays? That's solution 2. Bonus points if you do number 5, which is interlock. What if we acted like one revenue team, not just once a year at the sales kickoff? What if we actually operationalized alignment? So we're going to focus on the layer 2 and layer 3. So go-to-market strategy. First question, I like to ask simple questions because they often reveal answers that people can understand, for God's sake. So what is a winning go-to-market strategy? What should your go-to-market strategy do for you? It should answer, where do we win? Where do we win? And how do we win? That's what a go-to-market strategy needs to do. So I'm going to go through a list of 7 pillars for any good, effective, reasonably, decent go-to-market strategy. And as I go through these 7 pillars, I want you to ask yourself, are we doing these at our company? Research and insights about the company, about the customer, about the market, about the competitor. Target audience, your ICP, your buying teams, your personas, your customer journeys. Product strategy and how that really delivers value in the eyes of your ICP. Positioning, messaging, and brand. How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we tell a creative and compelling and emotional as well as rational story that they believe? Growth program strategy. Okay, how do we go to market? What's the architecture of our growth engine? Go to market operating. Who's got to do what? And then where's the money and how are we going to manage it and how are we going to know that it's working? So raise your hand if you do these things at your company. You don't do these things at your company? All seven. Okay. Yes, right. So here's my point, and this is the solution. The direction of the solution is, it's not just are we doing these things? Most of the companies I work with do many of those things, but there are gaps, to your point. There are gaps. So you got to fill those gaps. You got to take your go-to-market seriously. But even after you fill those gaps, they tend to do those things in silos. So the trick is not just are we doing these things, are we connecting the dots one to the other? There's huge implications between, once you define your target audience, that has everything to do with your product strategy, it has everything to do with how you position. So this horizontal connectivity across your go-to-market strategy, critical. And then also connectivity across your go-to-market teams, product, marketing, sales. That's the question. Not are you doing stuff in PowerPoint, do you have a mutually understood go-to-market strategy? Okay, so we have now a winning go-to-market strategy. Time to go do some heroics and some tactics, right, John? No. What you want to do is run your go-to-market like it's an always-on, cross-functional operating system. So it's not done once a year. It's not only done when you go and talk to investors to get more money. It's a living, breathing operating system that guides how you go to market. So, how do you go to market? Now we're in layer 3, integrated growth plays. We've created a go-to-market strategy. We're on the same page. If I interview sales and say, who's our ICP and why should they choose us? It's the same answer as the person writing my blog articles. Now it's time to execute integrated growth plays. Integrated growth plays are how you avoid siloed heroics, and it's how you actually execute your go-to-market strategy. It's how you make it happen in the real life. And what you're going to notice is that you've got different growth goals. You probably have brand awareness and demand creation growth goals. You probably have acquisition of new logo growth goals. You've got to renew your existing customers. You've got to expand existing customers. And if you're really doing a good job, you're thinking about customer experience and CX and community along the way. So what I'm trying to tell you with this slide is, step 1, get your go-to-market strategy right. Step 2, execute integrated growth plays. Don't just hurl siloed tactics at your TAM. You following me? You with me? So how do you choose the right growth play? That's the question. We've put together, and I'm not going to go super detail into this, but imagine you've got your growth goals clearly lined out at the top. This is what our acquisition, this is how many new logos we've got to get. This is how many existing customers we need to renew, how many existing customers we need to land and expand, cross-sell, upsell. So for each of those growth goals, ask yourself some of these questions. How many accounts are we going after? What's the value of an account? What level of targeting, personalization, cross-functional orchestration do I need? And then and in light of all that, what am I willing to spend to win that account or renew that account or land and expand that account? When you interrogate your growth goals through this lens, a nice little menu or continuum of growth plays comes up. And these are the ones that most of our clients who are crushing their growth goals are doing. Brand, inbound, product-led, targeted demand gen, account-based, one-to-many, account-based, one-to-few, account-based, one-to-one. Call those primary go-to-market motions, primary growth plays, and then they support them with secondary partner-led, community-led, customer-led. So the solution to the two biggest problems is to align around a winning go-to-market strategy and then execute that go-to-market strategy with world-class growth plays. And so right about now, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot. I'm overwhelmed, and I hate this guy, right? So it can be done in a very simple way. In fact, what I would strongly recommend is don't try to boil the ocean. What I want you to do is to take this advice and land it into one play. Pick one growth goal Use that last slide to figure out the right growth play to build, and then build one integrated growth play that lands all of the principles that I've been talking about into one growth play. And so this is one we did with Robert at IntelliPeer. This is a skinnied down, simplified version of a simple growth play. So on the left, you can think of that as the go-to-market strategy, the guidance of this campaign. Top of funnel, how do we engage those personas? This is a one-to-many CPaaS, land and expand, cross-sell, upsell, existing customer play. Top of funnel, how do we engage the right personas at the right accounts? How do we qualify, nurture, educate, inspire them? How do we get them ready with calls to action, high-value offers for our sales team? This is the program, the demand program as a service that Robert was just talking about, that we're launching right now. And so it doesn't have to be crazy, it doesn't have to be hard. So the key takeaways, I've got a couple. One is I want you to commit with me. I want you to vanquish siloed heroics at your company. Kill them. And how do you do that? By aligning around a winning go-to-market strategy that you execute with integrated growth plays. Then I want you to start small. I want you to pick one goal, one play, nail it, and then scale it. Okay? So that is my talk for right now. So you can get a copy of this deck if you want. Talk to Robert about this special CPaaS demand program as a service. And if you like what I'm talking about and you want to geek out and talk shop, you can find me on LinkedIn right there. And what we're going to do with the rest of the time is I'd like to invite the panel up to join me. We're going to sit down here and we're going to talk about what are the challenges and what are some wins in the real world that practitioners are facing as they evaluate and update their go-to-market strategy and build demand. So could the panelists come on up? We've got Reineke Beidorf, Gwen Lafage, and Hans Kramer. Hey, y'all. Good to see you. Have a seat. Hi, good to see you. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so what do you think? What do you think about this B2B growth stuff? Just to start right there, what does this make you think?
Overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot, no, but it's good stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
All in one comprehensive, quick talk, but really good, yeah, to the point.
Yeah, I tend to put 10 pounds of go-to-market in a 5-pound bag, I know. Talk to me about, did the concept around siloed heroics hit? Did that resonate with you, in any of you around? Have you seen that before?
Yeah, a lot. I call them random act of marketing.
Yes.
So I think it's a common mistake that a lot of marketing teams do because especially the more pressure they get on like delivering leads, which is a common way of approaching things.
Yes.
In B2B, I think they tend to be like, okay, what do we do? And go in different direction and randomly try to make some small act instead of thinking in a more integrated way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely resonated.
We'll talk about how to fight those siloed heroics in just a second, but Hans, have you seen any of that siloed heroics in your career?
Never in my life. Yeah, obviously. I think that everyone, and I think until like 5 years ago, we could get away with it, kind of.
Yeah.
Because marketing was doing its own thing with MQL hamster wheel, like doing lead gen programs, and then all of a sudden, market like crushes or like whatever, things get rough, and that's where you need to find each other and figure out how we're gonna like play this game together.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. What are some ways that you have begun to boil down this complexity and land it not in a siloed tactic, but maybe in the direction of what I was just talking about, which is, okay, we need to go to market in a smarter way, a more efficient way. We know that there are these levers that you can pull. You can work on your target audience, your ICP. You can work on your positioning and your messaging. You can work on your brand. You can execute demand programs, ABM programs. You can go down to the tactical layer and do better at content, do better at paid media. Where in that stack, tell me a story about a challenge you faced and then how you solved that challenge.
I think one of the things that we've really tried to get to in the last 2 years, we're a company who have acquired in 3 years' time over 18 companies. So while
Wow.
you're trying to build your one cohesive system, that is even more difficult. But
Yes.
in order to make sure that we at least try to not work in all these kinds of different silos, we figured out how we wanted to really drive from, and it was one of your slides also, from what is the overall key strategic goal and
Yes.
strategy that we want to aim for as a company, and really work from there all the way down into the different disciplines in target setting. So it's really like a very strong cascade down into targets, and that you are sure, at least from a framework perspective, that you work towards the same objectives, strategic goals, with a similar set of KPIs. And another thing is also that we try to harmonize our incentive scheme also, to make sure that there is some kind of unification around those targets, so that we all speak the same language if we talk our ICP, for example.
I love that word, harmonize. We use the word orchestrate as well often. And yeah, the incentive, the compensation piece is a big piece. Talk to me about, as you were doing this top-down, clarity around goals, did you hit any speed bumps along the way? And if so, what were they and how did you solve them?
Oh yeah, speed bumps all over. I think when you try to work through some kind of cohesiveness and full integration and consolidation of a company while you're still acquiring other companies, it's really important to engage with leadership, but also especially the people working with customers, our customers, and asking them what the ambition, but also our purpose. We are a purpose-driven company, so we got to get that clear, and everyone working towards that. But that has been a really long and intense process, and you almost need to slow down first to really accelerate before that can happen. So that was something I think you could honestly say we did not anticipate for that taking that long. But in the end, I think where we've landed it now, hopefully it helps us speed up.
As an executive yourself, and then your executive peers across the go-to-market team, how do you make sure that they get engaged and stay engaged across that transformation? Because what I've seen is that it takes sustained executive sponsorship, like really, to make change happen.
Yeah, that's really difficult, and especially most of those companies have still their original founders in them. They're very proud, of course, clearly, and they should be. But then doing it in a more of a bigger scale organizational manner, where they need to adopt and they need to be flexible, requires a lot of physical meetings also, where possible, because it was said also before this morning. That's still really important in these kind of circumstances where you need to find the common denominator. Don't let it all come down to remote sessions. Try to really invest in the personal relations and see where you can find each other in the middle, because everyone needs to give and take a little bit in that sense.
That's great. So I'm hearing from your story, make sure that everyone on the multiple teams really understand what the goal is. I'm hearing, don't take change lightly. It might take longer than you think. Get executives involved. I'm hearing also something around, you've got to find a way to bring simplicity to the complexity. You've got to make it simpler to win inside your team. That's great.
Yeah, and find something that really help people to rally behind. So differentiating, unique.
Well, that's what's so great about brand, right? I mean, when you have a deep brand that's really anchored in values, and it's real, that's the manifesto. That's great. All right, great, good. Gwen, I'd love to hear, take this anywhere you want to. I know you have a big career and you've solved lots of problems. What does this make you think of?
I think the first reflection I had looking at your slides, which I think was interesting, is we hear a lot that marketing is simple. Like a lot of people think that they can do marketing. Oh, it's just marketing, right?
Send them to me, I'll do it.
And I think that was like a good statement to kind of show some of the complexity.
Yes.
And show that adding to this complexity in the way people buy, a global organization that go to market and across the globe, and a large portfolio that might not align around one go to market, right? Like at Cinch, we are sales led, but we also have some applications that are more self-serve, and I think there has to be different approach to marketing and different go-to-market for each one. And I think the good thing is maybe starting by having a good understanding of your customers and the market and how they buy. You don't buy an application you can try yourself in the same way as like a big enterprise $1 million product, right? So I think those have to have different approaches.
Yes.
And you solve it differently, right? I think it comes down to alignment. I will say alignment from, like you said, top down, from what are the goals of the company. Based on that, what are the goals of the rocks that the marketing team needs to approach? And based on that, like how does your team rock align to like those marketing rocks? And then I think in the region, or like in a lot of those marketing play, how you align with sales and customer success. And that's what makes an aligned go-to-market, right? It's really how you make sure that it doesn't start and stop at marketing, but that it goes, everyone is going in the same direction. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of companies make in creating all of those silos, when everybody just go in one direction and they don't talk to each other. We talked a lot about marketing sales alignment, I think with ABM plays, for example.
Yes.
I think now we're going a bit further in like aligning the entire go-to-market together.
That's right.
So I think that's something that we see as a big shift of approaching, I think, marketing, and that should make things easier. I do feel as well that we've been not forced, but like we did this to ourselves probably in marketing, but with the rise of marketing automation, we really went all down into narrowing down marketing at like a lead gen approach.
Yes.
And like going all in on marketing automation, gating a piece of content, getting an email.
The old playbook.
Kind of like, and a lot of companies still do that. And I think in some ways it's not like you shouldn't do that at all. It has a place, I think, to definitely collect email addresses, but I think there is a different way of thinking now on like how you need to be there before they look for you, before your customers look for you, and how you kind of build brand. I'm a brand person, so obviously I'm going to say that, but I think there's definitely a better understanding now that building your brand, being top of mind when they are ready to buy is essential, right? You said 84% of people just like buy the first name that comes to mind. Well, you need to be that first name.
That's
and I think that's what marketing should be about.
I totally agree. In B2B
name.
marketing, for years, we have over-rotated on bottom-of-funnel active demand to the neglect and to our own harm around brand. The problem is brand's got a bad name. When you say brand, everybody thinks that we're talking about identity or logo or narcissism. That's not what we're talking about here. When we say brand, we're talking about your company's reputation in the minds of your ICP. And do they put you on that short list when they are finally ready to buy? That's awesome. Thank you.
And I think that's the way that marketing plays a role across, right? I think we tend to over-index on one part or another, and put them in parallel, right? You're either like performance marketing or your brand, and it's not the case. It needs to be all of it. It's like you cannot just favor one tactic versus another, or one part of the funnel versus another. Marketing should have a place in building the brand, building the awareness, but also helping throughout the funnel, helping with customer marketing. Like there's definitely a place and a need for building those connections at scale. That's kind of what marketing is, right? Building those relationships, those connections at scale throughout the entire experience.
Yeah, and that's what a good, I would submit that that's what a good integrated growth play does, is it helps you play the long game, the mid game, and the short game in a targeted and personalized way. It helps build demand today, help your salespeople hit the quarter today, but it also recognizes you probably have pipeline goals next quarter and the quarter after that. That's really great. Thank you. Hans, what's a story that you might add around how you've created demand in a smarter way? Or even a mistake that you've overcome.
Yeah, I mean, mistakes all over the place, and I'd be happy to share some of them. No, so it's funny for me to see founder and CEO. I'm a one-person company, so I don't really feel like CEO right now. But in the past 5 years, I was the marketing leader at Anywhere365, a CCaaS company for the Microsoft ecosystem. And I've had numerous discussions, like in different places of the organization, in like C-level first. And I think that one thing that I learned was that we've not done ourselves a great favor telling everyone that everything is measurable, right? And attribution. And so what I found was my CFO would come to me and say, listen, we have some extra budget. Where do we put it? And I was like, well, let me think about it. What do you mean, think about it? Just look at your dashboard, right? Look at Google Analytics and see where we need, where the traffic comes from that has a higher percentage chance of converting into demo request. So we looked at it, and it was direct. And I was like, so he was like, so see, you need to invest more in direct. Well, where? Right? And so the whole attribution discussion, I think that we falsified it. What we saw when the market got more rough, and so there was a knife on my throat, saying what do we need to do to make sure that we still grow, or in the pace that we wanted to grow. And I looked at the attribution reports, and I was like, well, there's a couple of things that we need to do. We need to go harder on Google AdWords. We need to bring in Bing ads, because we're seeing that search is doing great, especially brand. Obviously, you can ask yourself where does it conflict with organic results that you would have gotten anyway. LinkedIn, lead gen, LinkedIn started offering lead gen forms. I was like, yeah, let's do lead gen forms on LinkedIn. And all these things were because we saw that these were the type of campaigns that would give us that pipeline for sales. And when I started thinking about because after a couple of months, obviously we didn't really see any big uplift, a little bit, and I was thinking it doesn't make sense to invest more in the, let's say, bottom of funnel. I'm not a big fan of the word, by the way, but the bottom of funnel, if people don't know who we are.
If they don't know who you are. It's that stat that said there's only so many people in market buying at any one time.
Absolutely.
They either know about you or they don't.
No, exactly. So that's one of the things that I become bullish on when I saw all the mistakes that I made. I hired 2 extra SDRs because I saw that my SDR did a great job, and then it turned out that was she was starting to manage 2 other people, and they didn't know the market, and so we did the data-driven thing.
Those stories are fantastic. Thank you for telling them, because they are really good examples of siloed tactics, because it's the kind of thing where you say, every time I write a blog, I get a lead. I'll write more blogs and get more leads. No, you won't, not necessarily. Every time I hire an SDR, I automatically get, no, you don't automatically get pipeline when you do tactics. You have to think through the value chain, the awareness to consideration, to evaluation,
Absolutely.
to purchase.
Yeah. So what I in the end, I just told my CFO, but also our sales leader, listen, we can do this all day long and we'll get the same results over and over again. So we're going to stop looking at all that data that we have at hand.
Yeah, what did you do instead?
So we did what I like to call it big bets, because that was really what it was. Just thinking out, how can we be more creative? How can we stand out? So what we originally would do is we would push our features and stuff. And every vendor has the same features. There's hardly any differentiation there.
I see this all the time. Yeah,
so I started talking with our customers. What is the exact pain that you have? And I made it my own objective to talk to at least 2 customers every week. Not just customers, but also lost deals, partners, people within our ICP that they were the hardest to get. And I basically said, you guys need to tell me like what resonates with you. Like, tell me your story. And that's been a game changer for us.
And I bet they didn't talk about your product.
No, not once.
Yeah.
So one thing that I saw, for example, was like since 2022, I think that everyone in the market started talking about AI.
Yeah.
Like, we need to do AI stuff and Gen AI and Open AI. And people that I talked to said, like, I'm like super hesitant to really spend my money there, like, because I don't really know what it can do. Like, so I decided, like, all right, let's, instead of pushing our own like AI features and stuff, let's educate the market, like, to the best of my abilities. We did like a podcast where I had speakers like Evan Kirstel, Kevin Keeler, like people who actually know about this stuff, because I didn't, for sure. To really just talk about, like, how do you make sense out of all this technology that's coming towards you. We never mention our brand in that whole series. The different types of content we did, like the create once distribute forever thing. So we created blog posts out of the back of it, audio stuff. And it worked like a charm. So we saw that 14% of our demo requests, this was Q4 last year, 14% of our demo requests told us that they first heard about us in our podcast.
See, that's great. That's great. I love the insight there is that you did something that is both obvious but surprisingly rare. You went and talked to a customer. You went and got into your market versus only talking to sales. Definitely talk to sales, but you went and talked to real customers. And then you didn't talk to them through the lens of your product and features. You just talked to them as humans, and you heard what they really needed was not an AI thingy to buy. What they needed, it sounds like, was education about AI. And you provided that, and then you built brand trust. That's great.
Yeah, so not even specifically about AI, but I sometimes wake up at night thinking about how do I solve this problem and how could AI possibly help us or whatever. So it was really about, that was basically my main question. What keeps you awake at night?
Yeah.
And then just talk about, let them decide what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, there were some questions that I wanted to ask. But
Sure. Good. Well, we could talk for a very long time, but let's call this maybe good for now. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your wisdom with us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Oh, Robert? Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes. So we've got 4 really high-powered people up here. Got a question over here.
Yeah, let's give them the cube. I love this cube. I've never seen this cube before. It's awesome. It depends if the first one's good. Yeah, we'll decide. I'm kidding. Of course you can.
So the model you presented, I mean, it's marketing best practices from the industry. It's absolutely fantastically summarized. But as you explained very well, it requires lots of interlock, lots of insight in very specific function, sometimes with different groups of people. So my experience is that when you do that thoroughly, the flip side, the risk of it, is that it becomes a pretty static waterfall model. And in the world of technology, you need agility.
Yes.
You need to try things, and if they fail, try something else, and do that at scale. So do you have any best practices on how to balance the beauty of the model, very well organized, on the agility of it?
Yes, I do, and your question, I deeply understand your question because it's a great question about where theory meets practice, right? And what I hear you saying is you can be a completist with a beautiful framework, but it can slow you down and make you bureaucratic and slow. And the trick is to find the sweet spot. The trick is not to not do the best practice. That's what I'm fighting against. That's what we're all fighting against here. We cannot revert to siloed heroics. So what do you do? If you do this long enough, what you begin to realize is that your company, truthfully, there are probably 2 or 3 integrated growth plays that either get executed or should be executed over and over and over, and they're driving 80% of your pipelining growth. And so the trick is you get good at that. Think of them as a center of excellence. And it's like a product. It's like product development, but the growth play is the product. Get good at the 2 or 3 growth plays that are going to drive your company's revenue growth. And then when you need to pivot, what's not going to pivot is the structure of that play. What's going to pivot is the messaging or the calls to action or the content that you put in that growth play. Does that make sense? So you can go very quickly once you understand that we're in the business of doing a one-to-many acquisition growth play. We're going to do it for the rest of our lives, but the messaging might change. So that would be my answer to that, is that don't use the completeness of a framework as an excuse to revert back to siloed heroics.
Can I add something? I like to think about it as well as 80-20 model.
Yeah.
I'll say maybe put 80% of your resources and your people in like executing on like the marketing machine that like gets things going, but keep 20% for wild creative bets. And like keep like think that maybe you cannot measure. Think that like people are not gonna ask you for like the ROI of that activity to try things out. And you'll fail, and sometime you'll succeed, and some good stuff might come out of it, right? Maybe you'll standardize some of it. But I think having that mindset keeps some agility, having some people testing stuff and going out of the box.
You never have all the answers.
Always a good.
Yeah, and even when you do, the market shifts, and it's time for new answers. Yeah. That's great. Thank you.